everybody. 9 o'clock in the morning in Edinburgh, Saturday. Thank you very much for making it to the Undateables Masterclass. I'm thrilled to be here chairing this session, particularly because I was a massive fan of the series. I think at first I was really intrigued to learn that there was going to be a series on Channel 4 that tackled love and disability. And I think the main reason for that was knowing myself living with a visible difference, just how difficult dating can be for anybody, but that added complication if you do have a disability, and just all the dates that I've messed up in the past. I wanted to know how other people did it and were they successful. It wasn't only me that enjoyed the series, it was 3.5 million people that tuned in to see the Undateables, and Betty have already commissioned a 4th series. So over the next hour, we're going to learn the trade secrets behind the Undateables from the people that made the show, but also from one of the stars of the show. But before we do that, let's remind ourselves of why it was so successful. Now here to discuss the series from behind the camera, we're thrilled to be joined by the commissioning editor, Liam Humphreys, who's head of factual entertainment at Channel 4. All of his hit shows, he says this is his favourite series for the last few years. We're also thrilled to be joined by Vicky Hamburg, the exec on Series 1. She previously produced Big Fat Gypsy Weddings. And also Sarah Spencer, who had previously produced Young, Dumb and Living Off Mum when she came to series produce the 2nd series and is now gearing up to exec Series 3. I just want to get the ball rolling. Liam, why is this show so important to you?
Lots of reasons. It's, I think fundamentally it's Betty made a beautifully crafted show and it's brilliantly executed, but I think it's quite a rare thing in that it's PSB to its core and it's also a high rating smash, and that's a really difficult thing to pull off.
Okay, and Vicky, what do you think it was that struck the chord with the audience?
I think bringing disability and people with differences into the mainstream and people watching it and really learning about the conditions, but actually more to the point just realising that they're just like anyone else and everyone deserves a chance at love, and I think that really struck a chord with people.
Okay, I think we're going to go a bit more in depth later on, but I want to talk to the star of the show first. Now, Sam, before the show, you'd never been on a date, never kissed a girl. What was it like being in the series?
Well, it was really good. It was labels and things like that. I done email. I work in a company called Skill Net Group in Dover. I had an email saying, can I join Series 1 of Undateables? And I said yes.
Straight away?
Yeah, straight away.
Okay, well, we're going to find out a little bit more about your experience later on. And you also brought your dad along, Malcolm, today, is that right? Malcolm, looking back, what was the experience like?
It was a really positive experience all the way through. And, we can talk a bit about that later on. But in lots of ways, I think it was positive for us. And I think it was a kind of positive experience more generally for people with disabilities.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think for me, the first question is, how did it all come about? Because it's so hard from the journey of pitching a show to casting. How did the Undateables journey begin?
It started a long time ago, really. I had the benefit of a pilot, so to speak. It was made by the Channel 4 Documentaries Department in 2006. It was a doc in I think it was the only human strangled truly madly deeply. It was an odd doc, and it was about this Harringay Council had a unit called I think it was Search for the Stars.
Stars in the Sky.
Stars in the Sky. Sorry, which provided a dating agency for people with learning difficulties, and it was the most fantastic documentary. It was just an odd doc. It followed them for 5 months, and it was basically just asides. It was something I'd never seen before. It was also a way of treating disability that I'd never seen before. It was fundamentally, once you got into the narrative, it wasn't about disability. It was about the human condition. It was about love. It was about relationships, and you were just relating to the contributors as people, as characters, and it was a wonderful device. And actually, There's also something about the people with learning difficulties in the programme that they weren't talking about the challenges of living with a disability. It was actually about how do you, the difficulties of functioning as a human being in the world anyway, and finding love and making relationships. And they were brilliant characters. They were almost pathologically honest about everything, very warm and open, and also quite vulnerable. So you really rooted for them and really wanted them to succeed. So anyway, it's my favourite doc of that year, I think, and it just stayed with me for quite a long time. And I think it was probably about 4 years later I had a meeting with Liz Warner at Betty, who was she was suggesting, would we like to do a dating show in factual entertainment, and I've always kind of resisted them, really, because I think two things. I think one, it's quite hard to make factual shows about dating work.
Right.
I think a lot of our shows are relationships are not the top line. They're the context and the subject of the story, not the top line. But I remembered her doc. She'd execed it and thought, is there a way that we could take that odd doc and turn it into a slightly more constructive factual entertainment brand. So we set about trying to work out what that might be. I'm sure Vicky can talk about in a bit.
And is that not hard because it's entertainment, there's that desire to get the big hits, the viewing figures, but then there's that public service remit to looking into disability. What came first?
I think the PSB's always got to come first, and then once you've got that, you work out how to make it accessible and how to make it something that everyone will want to watch and have a big impact. I mean, that's what Channel 4's here to do, really. It's commercially funded, so we have to be commercially minded. We need to have a big impact on what we do, but you can't lose sight of the starting point, and that is which issue we're going to be exploring and bringing to a big audience. So, and that's really, how to turn it into a fact-set proposition. It's more constructed, it's less observational, but I think the most, and also the tone's slightly lighter, although it's still got huge pathos, and it's still about the same issues. But I think fundamentally the most important thing was the title.
Yeah.
And I think I'd watched The Incredibles around that time, and featuring another set of unlikely superheroes, and it just came to me, I think, as a title, and I talked to Liz about it, and she was, completely on for using it. We both knew exactly what we were getting into.
So that title came about in the beginning. There wasn't.
From the very beginning, before along with the idea almost.
So there wasn't a working title that was different.
Absolutely not. No.
Right.
And as a title, we knew what we were getting into, but we knew it would do the job because we knew it would provoke a debate. We knew it would cause a lot of heat around the programme. We knew that it would, therefore, if the programme worked, it would be a lightning rod. But not a lightning rod can be a good thing, for a lot of attention. But also, it was completely defendable. It's ironic, it's about society's perception of the people in the programme. It's not about the people themselves. So it was risky, but it was a calculated risk because I think it's completely defendable.
And what about in the early days when you're making a programme and there isn't any marketing and you're still casting? I mean, Vicky, when you first approached the charities to try and get those members of cast with that title that wasn't a working title, how was that?
Yeah, it wasn't easy at first. Ringing people up and saying we're making a programme about people you work with, and it's called the Undateables. Never went down very well, but of course we were always very open about the title from the very beginning. That was very important to us, and as Liam says, it was completely defendable from day one. So we just had to continually explain that it wasn't that we were saying they were undateable. It's a reflection of how society views people like this. But it was really, really hard getting charities and all the campaigning organisations on board. But actually, with a lot of hard work, we did get people on board. And I think what we did graphically with the title really, really helped. That really helped turn people around, actually. That we promised that we would knock off the and the title would dissolve or resolve, however you say it technically, into saying the Dateables.
So did you always knock off the from the beginning? That
Yeah.
was right. Okay, so that wasn't something that came about with the resistance from charities.
No, one of the charities suggested to us, was there a way of making it that it would eventually say the Dateables? And we
Yeah.
discussed it and we all thought that was a really good idea, and that immediately put people at their ease because they could see actually what the intention of the show was in the end.
What do you think made Channel 4 so confident from the beginning? Because they'd had such a success with the Paralympics. I mean, this is ultimately quite a scary project to go ahead with, but they gave it the green light nearly straight away, didn't they? So
Yeah, I don't know really. I mean, I think it was a calculated risk. I think it speaks to our core values on lots of levels, and it's, you know, we're here to take risks. It's what we do, and I mean, for me, as I said, I had the benefit of a pilot. I knew something magical in the subject matter. I think I had one conversation with Jay about it. She got it immediately, and to her credit, backed, you know, backed me and backed it, and backed Betty to deliver it. And I think it's a great concept, and I think, yeah, it's risky, but I think we were confident it would. We were always confident it would work. Not to say we weren't worried or nervous about it. It was going to be a difficult thing to land because you've got a huge duty of care to make an entertaining show with these contributors.
yeah.
But it's a brilliant production team, and we're always confident about it.
So every once in a while, there's always a show that people are talking about before it's aired. They have a really strong opinion about it before. Sometimes it's even made and any of us have seen it. And I think the Undateables was definitely one of those shows. There was a big marketing campaign, one that some people might say was quite controversial. I think we've got a few slides that will remind us. Now that was the poster that actually outraged some charities and some members of the public. But it was a moment that maybe defined the series. I mean, love is blind, love is disfigured, love is autistic. How did the producers handle the reaction from the press? And this was before the show had actually TX'd, wasn't it?
Yeah. Do you mean how did we help the contributors through it?
Yeah, well, but what about the previews from the journalists? How did you handle the negative reactions?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of held our nerve because we knew, we had a very strong sense that once the first show had TX'd, you know, there's often a lot of uproar before a show goes out purely based on a title, and we just really felt strongly that once they'd seen it, people would feel very differently about it, and that did play out. The press really, really warmed up and became very affectionate towards the show.
And the people that you built the relationships with, the charities, did they start to get wobbly at all when they started to see the negative reaction?
I think people were just a bit nervous, and I'm sure, you know, you're all nervous at that stage, that maybe it could go the other way. But on the whole, everyone was on side, and we, you know, Betty have a policy of showing contributors their shows beforehand so that everyone's included in it, everyone knows what to expect, and I think that really helps keep everybody calm. And it is just really, it's the same with every show, isn't it? It's just that moment of holding your nerve and waiting for the reaction after it's aired.
And I know as a contributor myself, it's when it's the unknown and you've never taken part in a documentary or a TV show, I think it can be quite daunting. So to get that reaction before it's even got out on telly, was that quite difficult to reassure the contributors they had done the right thing and they were going to be looked after?
Yes and no. I mean, Sam and Malcolm can probably talk about that as well, but I think people really felt good about it, and they knew that we had all the support in place. They knew that they could speak to Channel 4 Press at any point. They could talk to us, they could talk to anyone on the team. We've got a psychologist in place for everybody, you know, should there be any negative reactions. So I think everyone was feeling all right about it.
Did you have that moment, Malcolm, where you opened a magazine and saw a picture of Sam or on the telly?
Well, there was a moment, wasn't there, when we went down into the underground. We've been in London for some reason and were confronted by a very large poster of Sam, which was quite surprising, wasn't it, Sam? What did you think, Sam?
Well, I was quite surprised about it, and I was in my place on the tube station before.
It's quite a strange moment, isn't it, to
Yeah.
see that? Yeah. And how did you feel out in public and seeing that around everybody else, seeing your picture like that?
I mean, people are quite happy about it, seeing me
Yeah.
on a tube station, or people bumping into me into football stadiums or train stations or whatever.
And what about people that live near you, the people that you know? Did they sort of say they'd seen the poster? Did anyone ask you how you felt about the publicity?
People who live with me are really kind to me, really. My family and my friends saying, well done, do another series.
Yeah. Oh, really? Very supportive. That's good. And what?
At Betty, we prepare people from day one. So we've got a really big compliance Bible that we've put together for the show. And within that, it's literally from the first time you speak on the phone, you're already preparing people for if you're in this show, there might be a huge press reaction. And at every meeting, it's sort of reiterated and reminded. So and all the way through filming, you're just trying to keep people prepared for what might come. So I hope that helps.
I think we felt actually, pretty well prepared. I think, I was quite uneasy about the title to start with. I think it took me a while to kind of get it. But actually I kind of became quite converted, and I got into quite a long email debate with a couple of organisations, the United Kingdom Council for Disabled People and the European Disability Commission. I can't remember what the organisation is, but it's an EU-funded organisation. Issued a kind of quite ridiculous joint press release before the programme went out, in which they accused Channel 4, this would have been before they'd seen the programme, in which they accused Channel 4 of portraying people with disabilities as, quote, serial seducers.
Really?
Now, as you can imagine, I really got quite annoyed about that, and got into some correspondence about it. And the European organisation was threatening to take Channel 4 to the European Court for Human Rights and God knows what. But it seemed to me that it was all kind of bluster and kind of really patronising and overprotective. What they seemed to be saying was that people with disabilities are incapable of making informed choices. And that was the nature of the to and fro correspondence that went by. And I kind of got a partial kind of mealy-mouthed apology from the British organisation and no reply at all from Europe. But of course the really good thing was that, as I pointed out to them, was that, what tells is who in the media picks up these stories, and nobody picked up on their press release. I mean, it just simply...
Oh, really? That's a shame almost, because it almost reinforces how important the show is.
It kind of disappeared. Whereas actually there was a lot of very... there was some negative stuff, but there was some very positive stuff. Sam did an interview with a guy from the Sunday Telegraph, which was a really good interview, and one for The Guardian. I think we actually, by the time the programme was going out, and we'd seen it, so I mean, it wasn't as if we'd seen it and we knew we had the, potentially the opportunity to say, well, we don't like this or we don't like that.
But the thing about the marketing campaign is that, I mean, I think it's a really good poster in lots of ways. I think it's difficult. It's difficult to get the warmth that the show has, and that's one struggle it had. So it couldn't completely portray what the show was about. But it did the thing like the title of pitching the concept into the public's imagination, and it also created, start creating heat again around what we think is a really important issue. So some of the press were complaining, but the audience were beginning to engage with it because of the title, because of the marketing campaign. And I remember watching with Lucy Leverg, who was series producer of Series 1 and now commented at Channel 4. Unfortunately can't be here today, but she is so instrumental in making the series. But we watched the first trail go out, and it trended on Twitter for the first trail.
Yeah.
I've never seen that happen before. And up to that point, I'd always been, very confident about it as a concept, but really worried about whether it was actually going to punch through. And at that point, I thought we really might be onto something. So.
And was this strategic in the marketing campaign you intended for this reaction?
Absolutely, yeah. Again, it's a lightning rod. We're here to provoke debate, and that's exactly what it was doing. So I mean, all these things are calculations, but and the thing about the press reaction, I think, you know, obviously press work, the narrative's going on. There was a bit of narrative around the title. There's a narrative around the press campaign, and this has to go on for a bit. And, you know, therefore journalists, when they watch the show, were writing about it in a certain respect. And then
But it was quite a quick change, don't
it
you
was
think,
quite a
from
quick
the first
change. And then
episode?
after the first episode, I think it was Lucy Mannon in The Guardian watched it, and there'd been, you know, various complaints. I think Daily Mail had written a bit of a shitty review about it. We saw a couple of others there, and she basically wrote about them, the other reviewers, saying that the inability to understand the title and the concept was, to paraphrase her, she said was chronic stupidity, which unfortunately is often found in people who suffer from Daily Mailism. And at that point, I kind of just relaxed a bit and thought, okay, someone's got it, it's working.
Okay. Now, all of the contributors in the Undateables are memorable for different reasons, and I think it has been one of the best cast shows of its time. But I think my favourite contributors, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, were you, Sam, and your dad. And I think that was because you had such a unique relationship. Now, you've obviously got a very honest and open relationship. Who was it that found out about the series first?
Well, I did.
You did?
I had an email.
Right, okay.
Well, I work in an interest company in Dover,
Right.
and I said yes to series 1 myself. I did it by myself. Dad wasn't there.
Oh,
at
right,
the
so you
time.
weren't in the first series?
No, well, I was in the first series, but I didn't know anything about I didn't know anything about Sam's kind of interest in doing it until a bit further down the line. So it was Sam's initiative. It wasn't anything to do with me. I sort of found out later that some people had been down to do a kind of trial film.
It's casting tape.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So, knowing, Sam, what the subject was about, dating, and I saw in the film that you'd not dated before, you'd not had a girlfriend, what made you so sure to take part? I mean, was it a difficult decision?
It was at first. Sometimes it was hot, sometimes it was cool.
Yeah.
There was a bit of both, really.
Okay. So it did take a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Liam, when you first saw Sam's taster tape, what were your thoughts?
I thought I thought it was the most extraordinary casting tape I've ever seen. It is the clip that starts the entire series. It's Sam drawing the blackboard about his ideal girlfriend,
Oh, yeah.
and it was brilliant. The whole office, I think, watched it, and it had a great punchline as well with the boobs, and we were we were sold. I mean, I can't think of another time that a casting tape has been at the front of a series. It's, you know, natural television star.
What about you, Vicky? When did you first hear about Malcolm and Sam?
I mean, a similar time, but same thing. We asked somebody to go and recce them and meet them because they'd been spoken to on the phone and sounded great. And same, as soon as we saw Sam drawing his ideal woman, we just knew he had humour, and that's something we were really looking for, actually.
Yeah.
Give it a light-hearted touch.
Because it seems to me you have a relationship that a father and son, but also like almost like mates as well. And is dating something that you talk about openly anyway before Sam had taken part in the show?
When it crops up.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it crops up, we do. Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting. You know, when you kind of have a close relationship, you don't actually think about it too much, do you? Mm-hmm. It wasn't really too much thought. So it was really interesting, and it was a kind of bit of a privilege, really, to actually see the relationship for ourselves, or at least it was for me to see it. It was.
And in those very beginning stages, before lots of filming had taken place, as a parent, did you have any reservations about Sam taking part?
Yes, I mean, I got a telephone call from Skillnet to say that I think Betty had been on and were interested in Sam being in the series, and at that point, I sort of said to Sam, "Well, actually, we need to sit down and think this through," and we because it's about trying to find a girlfriend, but it's being filmed, and do you really, are you really up for somebody following you around with a camera while all that's going on? So we did sit down and think it through. And I was concerned as well. And I was, you know, a bit like the Daily Mail, slightly concerned about whether it's going to be a freak show, or we really didn't know. But I was quite actually reassured. I think the first telephone conversation I had with somebody at Betty was reassuring. I actually felt, well, actually this sounds okay. And then when Luke Sewell, the director, came down to see us, you know, he came down, somebody else from Betty came down. There was we had a conversation for 2 hours, half a day almost, talking it through. And at that point, as a parent, I was pretty much completely reassured. I mean, I really got what Luke was saying he wanted to do, and in a way, more importantly, what he didn't want to do and what he wasn't going to do with the programme. So it was, you know, it was very reassuring. So that kind of process of developing trust was really important, very, very important. I don't think, I'm absolutely sure the programme couldn't have been as successful as it was if that trust hadn't been developed, not just with us, but with the other contributors as well. It just wouldn't work if there isn't that trust thing going on.
I think all of the casting was first class, and I know you had to approach around 900 organisations, is that right? There's a lot of organisations.
We're up to 2,000 right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And in telly, casting can be incredibly difficult and also quite ruthless. And I know with any show there's a duty of care. But Sarah, how would you deal with people that had been put forward that you actually had to reject?
That we had to reject? I mean, we were, from the very, very first phone call, we were very clear about that's always going to be a possibility, that there's no guarantee. And then we, as much as possible, speak to support workers and close family members and friends to work out whether actually we should even be going and wrecking people, whether actually even that process is going to be, if they're robust enough for that. And then, so that those conversations are ongoing all the way through. And obviously when we do then have to reject somebody, they're sort of very prepared for that, and we're sort of continually explaining that it's all about, there are lots of people making decisions about who goes in, and it's all about getting the right mix of, you know, male, female, different parts of the country, different range of conditions. So obviously there's no guarantee, and we talk to, you know, a lot of people, and they're just very clear about that. So I think, and everybody gets a phone call, of, you know, rejection at some point if they're going to be rejected.
So you did have to turn some people down?
Yeah, of course. We talked to lots of people, and I think, you know, there are the usual checks and balances in place that you use for any casting, since you're looking for engaging, compelling characters, but then that beyond all of that, the duty of care is enormous. So you need to really feel, and our psychologist needs to be assured, and the support workers and the close family and friends, that these people can handle going through this process. So if any of that falls down at any point, obviously we don't go ahead.
And is there an added layer of, if you're having to psych test people and get people to consent, and people actually aren't able to do that, how do you deal with that?
If they're not able to go through the
psych test, was there a psychologist that helped you with the casting?
He would go, anyone that we thought we'd like to move forward with, he would go and spend sometimes half a day, even whatever was necessary, to assess in a huge amount of depth whether it would be appropriate to proceed, really. So if, I mean, they probably had a couple of cases where it hasn't felt right. And that's also to do with feeling reassured that family members are 100% on board and are there as genuine support, and not just because they want their kids to be on television.
Of course, yeah. So now you're casting for Series 3. What are the challenges that you're facing?
I mean, it is a hard casting job. I think finding people who are prepared to expose an intimate part of their life on national television is always difficult. And, you know, we're looking for people who, I mean, it's the same as any casting process for making programmes about love are tricky. It's very exposing, it's very intimate.
Did any of the charities ever make it difficult for you?
I mean, no one's directly obstructive. There are charities who don't necessarily do a huge amount for us. but they're, you know, as I said, we've got 2,000 organisations on our database now who are all helping.
So some charities might put people forward.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we find people mainly.
And do you think it's a lot easier now that you've had the success of the previous series?
Yeah, I think people have got over the title.
Okay.
You know, we have to sort of justify that less and less.
And what about when it comes to actually matching the dates? Do you match disabilities with people?
With people with learning difficulty, we take advice from the Stars in the Sky, who are obviously the agency who deal with people with learning difficulties, and they are very much pro matching people with learning difficulty with learning difficulty. For anybody else, then it's down to them. It's on a case-by-case basis whether they want to be with somebody not non-disabled or not. That's up to them.
Okay.
And of course, in terms of the casting, once you've cast your main characters, you've got the whole challenge of, once you've found them a date, seeing if they then want to be on TV. So it's almost like you've got to go through that whole process again in order to actually film a date. So it's almost like doubly hard.
And if someone didn't want to be on telly, but they wanted that date, would you still help facilitate that date off screen?
Yeah, but
After.
ideally after the filming's finished.
Right, okay. Otherwise you'd just be setting
we
up
have
dates
people,
everywhere.
so there's a whole network behind the scenes going.
See them again.
That's true. Okay, well, while we're talking about dates, Sam, I don't want to embarrass you, but I wanted to come back to you because you actually went on quite a successful date in the show, didn't you? And luckily Betty were there to capture that date. So let's have a look at the date.
Okay.
So Sam, that looked like it went really well, apart from forgetting the money.
Yes.
That wasn't so good.
No.
When you first immediately saw her, did you know that you liked her straight away?
Yeah, I did.
did?
Yeah.
How did you know that?
A spark and things that I liked and she likes.
So you had a lot in common.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on that clip there, you look really relaxed and at ease. But the reality was there were cameras there filming the whole date. I mean, was it easy to forget about the cameras?
Very easy. I've got the cameras weren't even there.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I've done some acting roles in the past.
Oh, really?
So I thought
Okay.
cameras.
That's good. That's really good,
Yeah.
And you didn't feel like other people at the zoo were sort of looking on and watching you film or anything like that?
Not at all, no. They're all right about it, the staff at the zoo.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think that must be something that's really difficult to do. You're filming a date, which is nerve-wracking for anybody. Do the camera crew step back and leave the contributors?
Yeah, we keep as far back as we possibly can and
Yeah.
get on tripods and hang right back and try not to intervene and let it just run as much as possible.
And I noticed as a viewer, there are a lot of times when it was quite silent. Do you just leave it like that, or do you feed lines?
No feeding of lines. No. I mean, particularly the dates, people with learning difficulties are chaperoned by some of the Stars in the Sky, and they feel quite strongly as well that we don't get involved too much. And we might, if someone nips off to the loo, we might grab a bit of interview. So how is it going? But we try and just hang back and melt into the background.
Dating's awkward, that's why people can relate to the show.
Yeah. But you didn't seem that awkward, though, I didn't think. I thought you were quite confident.
Yeah, I was very confident. Wasn't cocky at all. I was myself and calm and collected.
Yeah. And was it an exciting time? Because, you know, when you go on a date with somebody, you don't know if you're going to get on. And it seemed that actually you hit it off straight away.
Yeah, I did hit it off straight away, yeah. I rose on the first date. I went to Edinburgh to get a rose.
Oh, right,
and
okay.
I gave it to Jolene.
Oh, that's really romantic.
Yeah.
Do you think if you hadn't taken part in the programme, do you think you still would have met Jolene? Could you have found love without the programme?
I would have, yeah.
You would have?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. And Malcolm, what about you watching? Because it's not normal to see your child on a date. Most parents, luckily, don't get the chance to witness that. What was that like?
Well, I was kind of really quite nervous on the way to the zoo, and because obviously it was kind of the first bit of filming that was being done, I think. We may have done a bit of filming before.
The date?
So no, I didn't chaperone the date. I simply went along as usual just to carry the bags and be a kind of general personal assistant. What I did when we got there was to just get out of the way, so I wandered off very deliberately. I thought the best thing for me to do is not be around.
Yeah.
Because mainly I think because Not because I wasn't curious, because I was. So there was the odd point where I kind of hid behind a bush and...
Oh no, that's cringe.
What's going on there? I mean, I needed to see what Jolene looked like for a start, because Sam hadn't met her before, and but once that had happened, I took a walk and sort of came back a while later, which is in a way partly why Sam forgot his money. That was in a way partly my fault, because really I should have said, well, you need a fiver in your wallet.
Yeah. Did you know she'd be his type when you sort of peeked round from the tree?
No, I mean I thought she was very attractive, seemed like a kind of a bubbly girl, but that was as far as it went. And I went off to see the snakes or whatever while they got on with it. But yeah, I was kind of a bit nervous to see how it would go. But.
Yeah.
So I didn't see it. So I didn't really see any of the date at all until I saw the programme.
And it was a lovely scene to watch because you gelled so well and you were laughing and having fun. I mean, to me, it looked like a good date. But what makes a good Undateables date?
I think when there's chemistry. And I think it's, for me, the date that stands out the most from series 2 was Brent, boy with Tourette's from Plymouth.
Oh, yes, yeah.
He goes on a date with Lizzie, and you can just feel that there's something,
that spark.
Yeah, and that as as a production team, that feels quite exciting to be around.
It's quite
there's
a cool
bit
job,
of magic
isn't it,
going
playing
on.
Cupid
Yeah.
But it's hard to, when you've got that responsibility of fixing a friend up on a date, it's really hard, and that's somebody you know really well. So is it hard to find the Undateables dates?
Pretty hard. I mean, we work very closely with the agencies to ensure that we find as close a match as possible. But again, there's the added complication, these people have got to want to be on camera. So it's that's the tricky bit. Right.
Now, I know we've got another clip from another contributor on a date, and that was Richard, he was a fantastic guy, and I think his date didn't run quite as smoothly as yours, but it was captured in such a brilliant way. Let's have a look at Richard's date. So that didn't go quite as well as Sam's date. How difficult was that, filming that and being there? Because after the cameras stopped, how did Richard feel that he'd been rejected?
Yeah, I mean, he was a bit gutted, but in his kind of manner, which is that he sort of makes a joke out of things. But we filmed it. That was from series 1. We just filmed it in the way we film all the dates, which is, as Sarah explained, we just stand right back. And so the crew can see what's going on, and obviously everyone's feeling a bit concerned for Richard. But we don't intervene. We're never supposed to intervene, and you've got to let the date play out. So that's what they had to do.
I think the key is preparing them for every outcome of every single bit of filming that we do, is just reiterating constantly. Obviously things don't, the likelihood of a date necessarily moving forward to a second date is a calculated risk. So.
He had a really supportive mum.
Oh yeah, I remember her.
And she had done some date practice with him and taken him out to a pub and taught him the kinds of things he should do. So, you felt as a team that you at least had, that you knew that his mum was going to be very supportive of him. And
that was his first date in 20 years, wasn't it? So that's a massive thing for anybody, to put yourself out there like that.
It's a learning process. And also, and all blind dates can go wrong. Again, it's not just for people who've got certain needs, somebody without any needs could have had that really awkward date.
The thing is, it is real. I mean, what goes on is real. I mean, it's it's gonna play out in the way in which anyone else's romances play out. And I think it was, I mean, you were talking about letting it run and standing back, and that's exactly how it happened. I think you might be talking about editing a bit later on, and I'll be interested to hear about that, because there was a lot of filming that wasn't used, inevitably, a huge amount. And I think in terms of how people are, what was actually happening was that Luke in particular and other people from Betty were talking to us all the time. And it was really good, so you get a phone call, 2 or 3 days after the filming, how are you feeling, how's it going? which was all very helpful and reassuring. So it wasn't just about, the duty of care isn't just about policy, it's about how people behave. It's about, and the making of the film's not just about the kind of technical stuff or the artistic stuff, it's also about the very much about the kind of interpersonal relationship stuff between the people who are making the film and the contributors, which is a constant thing, I think, was a constant thing all the way through.
It does sound like the duty of care was front and centre of everything for the production. And particularly with Richard, I know he was very into a structure and a routine. So film crews can change, people change on the job. I mean,
But
how
we
difficult...
don't.
You don't?
We're very, very adamant that whoever starts filming with someone stays filming with them, and the teams are very consistent and they're small. It's normally a director with an AP, and they stay with that one person, with that one contributor for the duration of the filming.
And if you make a date to film and a time to film,
Right.
you don't change it.
So it's a very specific structure.
Yeah, we put together a massive compliance protocol for ourselves
Yeah.
to follow, and we adhere to it really, really strictly, because it's the only fair way to behave, and it would actually be good if you could do that, if you behave like that on all
That'd be great,
productions.
yeah. And we've talked a lot about managing people's expectations when dating, and it must be really hard to help people feel good about being on telly if things don't go well for them. And we've got a clip here from series 2 of Michael, when he finds out that a girl doesn't want to see him again. Did you know that was going to happen before you filmed that scene?
We had an inkling, so therefore we took quite a few steps to work out whether we should film that scene or not, or whether that should be off camera.
Yeah.
And that involved having lengthy discussions with Stars in the Sky, Caroline, who's calling him, and both Michael's parents and his support worker, and they all felt strongly that, and directly with Michael himself, we talked about potential different outcomes of various scenarios and how he would feel about being filmed.
So he knew he was going to get that phone call?
He didn't know that the actual outcome, but we talked very clearly about how would he feel if the outcome was that. How would he feel about being filmed? He was completely all right with it, but most importantly, everyone else around him was. So then we took the decision to go ahead, and that Luke then spent the rest of the day with him not filming,
right,
and didn't leave till he knew that he was all right, and sort of daily phone calls around that, and he soon went out on another date pretty quickly. And I mean that was the case with every bit of filming with Michael. It was always working out every single sort of talking him through potential outcomes and emotions, so he sort of was prepared for the emotion before it happened in a way. I mean, to be honest, he got more upset. The moment he got more upset when we were filming is when he got his mobile phone stuck down behind a radiator.
Okay.
That caused more stress than actually any of the going out on a date or sort of things not working out. It was more that sort of detail that was perhaps more handling than...
And what about when the programme aired and other people saw him rejected like that? Was there a conversation with contributors about things like social media?
Everyone's had quite a detailed debriefing before around TX about blocking people and not going on, avoiding Twitter, Facebook, etc.
And what about you, Sam? Do you use Facebook or Twitter?
Yeah, I use both.
Yeah, and did you look online for a reaction to the series or a reaction about your story?
Yeah, people like my stories on Undateables ones. And I got my own Twitter page saying Sam and Jolene, so people give us messages.
Supporting the relationship?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, all right. Okay, and what about you, Malcolm? How did you feel the support was from the production?
I thought the support all the way through was great. Certainly there was some advice about social media and ignoring it, or there was some advice about what to do if people kind of found you, which they did me actually, funnily enough, which was sort of a surprising.
How did they find you?
A surprising and slightly amusing. I had a few emails and stuff from admirers, which was a completely.
So you got dates from the show.
Well, I could have done. Yeah, I could have done. Yeah, quite a few. which was a completely unexpected. I didn't know whether to be amused, confused, or
This is
bemused.
another series.
Really.
There's a different program.
A bit of both, and I only met one who actually literally found me, which was interesting. But we decided, Sam and I decided that we couldn't resist actually looking at the kind of Twitter stuff and the stream, and I actually got quite sort of, well, not obsessed with it, but I looked at it, and I thought it was, I thought the whole social media reaction was really interesting, and a kind of real justification for the programme, because, you know, there you were getting, you know, it was a largely young audience. There are a largely young audience of people who actually normally probably wouldn't have thought much about issues around people with disabilities at all. And the reaction was, you know, overwhelmingly, hugely positive. All right, there were a few, you know, of course there were a few people who were making kind of inappropriate and stupid comments on there. There were probably a few too many how cutes on there, but there were a lot of people who clearly were actually thinking about issues that they just would not have thought about at all if they weren't watching that programme. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed looking at all the kind of Twitter stuff, and the reaction, as you were saying earlier on, was absolutely massive. Yeah.
Okay, now Liam, I want to talk to you about the editing process, because you go into the edit for 11 weeks, is that right?
Betty did, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And why do they invest so much into the editing process?
I think the series, more than any other perhaps, I've worked with, is just about the tone. It's about executing the tone, and I think they're quite difficult stories to tell, because there's so much nuance involved in the dates and building the characters, and I think you know, it's we've touched upon it. You know, it's really important that it's not a show fundamentally about disability. It's about the human condition. It's about love. It's about relationships, and it's you know, the first rule of factual TV is just make me care about the characters and make me care about them quickly. So we kind of eventually fell into a pattern in the edit, which was the narrative is their search for love. You learn about the disability by stealth. I mean, to begin with, we actually played around a bit by not mentioning anyone's disability, and there's no reference to it, and you kind of built it, and then after a while, I felt like we'd gone too far the other way, so we would just kind of get it in at the beginning, near the beginning of the story, but it wouldn't define the story. And also, you know, very careful to make sure that, you know, if there were parents around, or that they would be included early on, and if there was, you know, that with their friends, they would be included early on. I mean, it's just everything to remind the viewer that, you know, first and foremost, these are people, and secondly, they happen to have a disability.
You really saw that support network in
Yeah,
the series.
and that was fundamental to it, because you watch it and you can relate to it with your own friends, or discussions you might have down the pub, or discussions, you know, chats you might have with your parents about your life, and that was absolutely key to establish people as characters. You're rooting for them, and to care for them early in the process. And then beyond that, it's about the editing. It's, you know, it's a really funny series. A lot of people in comedy, strange enough, absolutely love it. And it's just picking out those wonderful moments in each character's story and in the dates to bring their stories alive.
Okay. And Sarah, how is the series assembled? Is it made film by film?
No, we cut the stories. Each contributor's story is cut first, and all those get signed off. And then once we've got most of those cut, then we decide to work out the balance of conditions and personalities, and then start weaving the programmes together after that.
And what do you look for in the editors in this case?
In terms of hiring the editors?
Yeah.
I guess people who can get the tone, really. You know, that takes a huge amount of crafting and patience, and really looking for the detail, not the obvious. I mean, you know, there's a sort of very soft format to it, in the sense of, obviously everybody goes out on a date, but it's sort of almost the bits that make it work, everything in and around, that are sort of outside of those basic building blocks. Yeah. So that does take quite a lot of attention to detail.
And what about the contributors? Everybody that's in it, are they allowed a viewing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as Vicky said, that's something also that Betty just that's their policy. I think it just helps keep everybody honest, to be honest, as well. And when we get to around TX, the contributors are feeling confident about it going out, and no surprises.
Yeah. How much say do they have when they go to that viewing? Was there anybody that said, I'm really unhappy with this and how I've been betrayed?
No, everybody's been completely happy.
Okay.
You change anything that's factually inaccurate.
Yeah.
The whole point at Betty of being sure that we're happy to sit down with people and watch it is for the very reason that you're very confident that they're going to be happy with the film.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making, that's what's there. So you're keeping yourself honest. You're making something that you've reassured them at the beginning that it's going to be.
I think Luke was much more nervous than us when he came down to show us
Oh, really?
the programme.
So he came to your house?
Yeah. I mean, he came down and so we had the opportunity to watch it. But I think he was kind of, really a bit nervous that we might say, well, we don't like this or we don't like that. But actually, it had been put together so well that we were completely happy with it, weren't we? So.
And it was real life, so you couldn't guarantee what would happen in that contributor's story.
No, I mean, I think there's the issue about editing and duty of care. There was part of there was a little part of the story of Sam where when Sam went up to the speed dating and a kind of very funky young woman decided that she'd like to dance with Sam. And Sam was quite happy, so off they went to the dance floor. And this young woman then proceeded to dance, well, extremely provocatively with Sam. So she was kind of gyrating towards him. And Sam was backing away, with an increasing look of absolute horror on his face. So he's until in the end he was literally hiding behind Luke.
Right.
And afterwards I said to Luke, "Oh, that's fantastic. That's going to be." It was so funny to watch, enormously funny, and I thought that's going to be absolutely brilliant. And Luke said to me, "Yeah, but the problem we're likely to have with it, I think, is that it's going to be about how the young woman was portrayed." He said, "Yes, it was funny," because he was in fits of laughter as well. Like we all were. And then later on, he said, "No, I don't think we're going to be able to use that," which was at one level a kind of real pity because Sam's face was an absolute picture.
It's very reassuring, isn't it, that duty of care?
But that was a kind of example of the kind of duty of care in action. I mean, Luke's first thought, my first thought was, "Oh, this is going to be really good," and Luke's first thought was, "Yeah, it would be really good, but it's very unlikely that we're going to be able to use it."
Now, I know that true love doesn't always... Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up, but one thing I do want to know is about the other relationships that did occur in this series. Has there been an Undateables wedding, or is anybody still in a long-term relationship?
Not quite wedding,
No?
but there are two couples from season 2 who are still together, about to have their anniversaries, and there are about 4 other people who have since got into relationships as a result of probably having been exposed to this process and getting out on dates and increasing their confidence. So there are 6 people currently in relationships.
And sadly, you're not with Jolene anymore, is that right? No?
No.
Are you in contact?
Yes, on Facebook.
Oh, okay, so you're still friends?
Yes.
Okay, right. And what about, I'd like to know the future for the Undateables. What can we expect?
Gosh, I mean, it's a difficult question. I to be honest, I didn't want to make series 2 to begin with. I thought, I was terrified of dropping the ball with it. Really, series 1 was almost perfect in my eyes, and then all credit to the team. I think actually we took a punt on it, and series 2 is actually even better. So I just think by small degrees, if we can just keep polishing it and keep honing it, and there's no reason to change it.
Okay. And I do want just to leave some time for questions to the audience, but before we do, Malcolm, they're casting for Series 3 now. What would be your advice to anyone who's approached to go on the Undateables?
I think my advice will be sit back, think about it, talk it through with the production team, talk it through with your family and friends, and then, you know, if you kind of, after that, if you feel comfortable about it, then go for it.
Okay. And one last question. Sam, is there any love on the horizon?
Not yet, but there
No?
might be.
Oh, really? Okay. Have we got time to do some questions?
Wait, one quick question.
Yeah. Anybody with any questions?
One quick question, that's all.
Okay.
We're completely over time.
Sorry.
I'll ask the question. Tim Carter, 2020. One of the things you touched on, but not necessarily talked a lot about, was the humour of the series, which seemed to me like a massively important characteristic of the series. And it also seemed to be something that Channel 4 pulled off brilliantly with the Paralympics, that this thing that you don't actually have to be po-faced about disability. I just wondered whether there were a few comments about how you tread that line between being able to laugh with but not at, to find the sort of the humour in the sort of human experience that we can all relate to.
I think you're rooting for the characters, so, and you know, we're rooting for them when we make it, so I think, you know, you're firmly on their side, and if they have disasters, you share that disaster, and if they have triumphs, you share that triumph. So I think within that framework, you naturally know how far you can push it. If you're, you know, if it starts to feel that it's slightly, you know, laughing out or being slightly vindictive, then you feel like you've crossed that editorial line. It's quite easy, actually. You know, you want them to win. You want them. You want them to have a successful date. Ultimately, you want them to have a happy ending. So, it's within that framework, and really, the rest of it's just showing life as it happens. And you know, there's something quite funny about everyday humdrum things or everyday things that happen in dates, which you don't normally see portrayed in television. And I think just that it's all in the minutiae, really, and the way it's cut and the way it's shot.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming to the masterclass, and thank you Vicky, Sarah and Liam for giving us that real understanding of the show. And thank you Sam and Malcolm for bringing one of my favourite shows to real life. And also thank you to Channel 4 for sponsoring the session. Thank you.